Hi there, it's V with Crafting Daily Dose, and today I've got a fun alternative for the September 2021 paper pumpkin kit called Harvest Haunts. I've used the stamp set to decorate this envelope and also to make the card on the inside. It's full of leaves, and when you open it up, you get even more leaves. Did you catch that? Let's take a slower look. Pretty cool, right? If you'd like to learn how to make this Confetti Flinger card, stick around and I'll show you all the steps. So to make this card, we are going to need some extra pieces. I've got basic white thick cardstock to use as my card base. It is 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and it's been scored in the middle at 5 1/2 inches. So it's a card that opens this way. The next layer that I'm using is soft succulent cardstock. This one is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And then the layer above that is going to be basic white cardstock. It's 3 3/4 by 5 inches. Now for our mechanism, we are going to need another piece of basic white cardstock. This one is 6 inches by 3 inches, and I'll show you how to score this in just a little bit. And then you may recognize this piece from when you first opened up your kit. This is the tissue paper that was used to wrap up the supplies. I've cut it into a square that is 2 1/2 by 2 1/2 inches. We have our pieces, so let's get started. To make the flinger mechanism, we're starting with a piece of basic white cardstock that is 6 inches by 3 inches, and we're going to do a little bit of scoring. Let's start with having the long side along the top, and we're going to score at 1/2 inch. I'm moving my darker cutting blade out of the way since I've already cut down my piece, and I'm going to be using the lighter scoring blade. So just make sure that you're scoring and not cutting. Score at 1/2 inch, then again at 2 inches, four inches, and at 5 1/2 inches. Okay, now we are going to turn it so that the short side is along the top, and we're going to go ahead and score it at 1/2 inch from both sides. So this time I'm using the measurements that are on the right-hand side, and I'm scoring at 1/2 inch. And then I'll turn it around and do the same thing on the other side. So here's what our flinger mechanism looks like. Next, I'm going to take my snips and cut off some sections to make some gluing tabs and reinforcement tabs. Since everything's white, it's probably hard to see those score lines, so I've gone and traced them in for you with my friction pen, and I'll erase that later with my heat gun. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to be cutting little wedges to create some gluing tabs. So I'm going to start with the ones that are in the middle here, and I'm just cutting out a little triangle shape to create that wedge, and it doesn't really matter the exact size. I'm doing a similar thing here at the corners. So here's what your piece should look like at this point. And then we're going to go ahead and fold all of these lines. I'm folding them as mountain folds, but it doesn't really matter as long as you're making them all the same way. So you can make them all mountain or all valley. And now I'll reinforce that with my bone folder. Now I'll turn this to the back side, and I will go ahead and glue in these side tabs here. These basically act as reinforcers to strengthen the sides of our mechanism. Now that my reinforcing tabs are glued down, I'm going to go ahead and cut some slits. The first one is going to be along one of these score lines. And I'm just choosing this one up here, but either one is fine. And I'm going to cut in with my snips. I've done probably about 1/4 of an inch there. 1/4 of an inch. So it's about halfway to this line because this is 1/2 of an inch. I'm also going to make a slit down here as well, near the other score line, but not right at it. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to come down by 1/4 of an inch. I've got my grid paper here, so I can just go ahead and use that to measure. Each one of these blocks is 1/4 of an inch, so I'll mark it here and here. And I'll cut slits again. Okay, so this is what it looks like from the front. Those slits are going to hold a rubber band in place. So I've got one here. I'm going to go ahead and slide it in, put it into those slits, and then I'm going to pull it down here, come around this way, and put it into the other slits that I created. Once we install this into our card, what's going to happen is that the tension from that rubber band is going to cause this to spring open like that. Now, I just found this in my junk drawer, just went through and looked for just some rubber bands. So came up with these. You don't want to use something like this. It's going to be too thick. It's going to put too much tension onto these slits. You don't want to tear your paper, and it's also a little bit thicker. It's going to be hard to fit into there. So that's no good. This one was another good candidate. This one's a little bit too loose and stretchy. That's not going to give us good tension. This one is an okay candidate, but it was too long. So if the only thing that you can find is too long, you can tie a knot in your rubber band like this. And then adjust that to be the size that you need, and you can still get that to work in your mechanism if you can't come up with another one. You're really looking for that Goldilocks rubber band that is going to give enough tension for it to spring up very quickly. Remember to test this before you try to put it into your card. Okay, I'm going to turn on my heat tool to erase those lines that I made with the friction pen. The last part of our mechanism is that piece of tissue paper. It's going to create a little pocket to hold the leaves on top of the flinger. So what we're going to do is fold in these corners towards the middle. And don't worry if your corners don't meet up exactly. It's not really important for it to be super precise. Once you've done that, pick one of the flaps and you're going to cut it off. Now I'm going to bring the flinger back. Now remember, it's got two parts where the rubber band attaches. One is right at the crease and one is 1/4 of an inch below this crease. The one that's right at the crease, this is the top of our mechanism. So what I'm going to do is put some Stampin' Seal right along here, and I'm going to lay this on top so that the corner that I cut off is going to go towards the top. The packet is a little bit smaller than that center panel, so don't put adhesive all the way to the edge. We're going to set this aside for now and do some stamping. We're going to stamp some leaves, and before we do it on the project, I just want to demonstrate some different options for you. We're going to first use what came with the kit in case you're just starting out. Here's my paper pumpkin stamping block. I'm going to put the more solid colored stamp on the one side, and then I'm going to flip it over and put the detail stamp with the veins and the stem on the other side. That's going to save me some time since I don't have to keep peeling one off and putting the other on. I can just go side to side, whatever I need. Here's the ink spot that was included. I can use my snips to score along this opening here and then open it up. I like to leave the sticker intact on the other side. That way it kind of acts as a hinge so that I can flip it open and closed. So I'm starting with the solid fill side first, and I'm going to apply some ink to it. Now, if the stamp is brand new, sometimes these photopolymer stamps have a little bit of residue on them that makes the ink bead up a little bit. So if that's the case for you, you can prime your stamp. There are several different ways to do it. The most straightforward is to just rub on it a little bit. I like to stamp on a little bit of a cushiony surface. This is a silicone mat. Sometimes I use a foam mat for my stamparatus, or you can also use a piece of craft foam or a mouse pad that isn't too squishy. I'm going to ink it up. And then I'll ink up the detail side. And even if you only have one color of ink, you'll get a really nice image and it'll be very classic to have a monochrome look. Now, if you do have more colors available to you, you'll get more variety with your leaves. So this is Poppy Parade, Pumpkin Pie, Pale Papaya, and Early Espresso. I chose colors that are coordinating with our kits, and then the Early Espresso is for the details in the leaves. Here I'm using Pumpkin Pie and Early Espresso. Now I didn't do a very good job of lining up my two stamps there because I did it kind of quickly, and also I'm looking at it from the side. At home you want to put your head right over the stamp and look through it so that you'll get a better alignment. If you want to step things up even more, you can use sponge daubers to apply different colors to the stamp for even more variation. So I'm starting with my lightest color, which is the pale papaya here, and I'm going to dab it on to some areas. I'm going to move to pumpkin pie, and it's the same color family, so I'm okay to do that with the same dauber. To switch over to Poppy Parade though, I'm going to use a different dauber. And then when I stamp that, I'm going to have variation in my color, just like a real leaf. Now we're ready to stamp on the project itself. I'm adding the soft succulent ink back in, and you'll see me stamp just a variety of leaves in different shades. I'm starting with the panel that goes on the front of the card. Now I'll go back through and stamp in the details. I can go back and fill in anything that feels like too big of a gap. I'm going to repeat that same process for the inside of my card. I'm keeping that top portion pretty plain because I want to make sure that I leave myself room to write a message. If I stamp over the crease, I want to make sure that I'm pressing down very firmly to get into the crevice so that it doesn't leave just a white line where the crease is. Now remember, it's totally up to you how you want your card to look. So you can keep it simple and make it a quick project, or you can step it up with as much detail as you want. I'm keeping my work area clean so that I don't get stray ink on the paper. I'm also going to stamp up a basic white medium envelope. While I have my ink out, I'll go ahead and stamp my sentiment onto one of the tags from the kit. Now we have these die cuts that we're going to use inside the flinger. Of course, when they come out, they can certainly land upside down. So if you want to add more interest to this side, there are a couple of different ways that we can add color. One way is to use the sponge daubers that we were already using and just go ahead and dab on color everywhere. I still have some residual ink on these, so I'm not even adding any more ink. So you can color them in that way. And then stamp in the details. And I'm moving that out of my area there so that I don't get straight ink on the other side, and I'll stamp the details on this side as well. If you have some leaf dies or punches in your collection, for example, this is the Strawberry Builder punch and it's got this leaf in it, you can use any of your leftover paper to create even more leaves for a greater variety. To get some fun texture for my card, I'm going to use one of these paper twists that came with the kit, and I'm going to start to untwist it. And eventually, you're going to see that there's a wire on the inside, and you're going to be able to unroll some of this paper. I'm going to cut that off and use that as part of my card. Usually for pop-ups, I prefer to assemble the inside first, but for this particular design, it's easiest to start with the outside. I'm not worried about that little tear because when we glue it down, you won't even be able to tell. As I put down the paper, I'm scrunching it up to give it that texture that I'm looking for. To install the flinger mechanism, I'm going to need adhesive along both of the remaining gluing tabs, and I'm going to stretch it out so that you can see. I'm talking about the one at the top and then this one at the bottom. And you can use glue here, or you can also use the double-sided adhesive strips that are in the kit. Whichever method that you use, you want to make sure that you're getting all the way up to the crease and all the way to the edge, and that you're covering the full width of the tab. Okay, once your adhesive is in place, we're going to open up the card and we're going to put it in. You want to fold it so that it is along this crease here. Remember, this is the one that has the rubber band right on the crease. And you're going to tuck this bottom flap under and decide where you want to place it on the card. I'm going to center it horizontally, and I'm going to put it right about here. So I'm just using my hand to hold it in place. I'll go ahead and untuck this bottom flap, and I will peel off the backing to expose the adhesive. Once that's done, I'll tuck this flap back down and press it down to my card. I want to make sure that that is firmly attached. Now I'm going to release this part up here and remove my backing. Once that's done, I'll fold this back down, again along that crease that has the rubber band right in it. I'll show you on the underside, this is down flat so that when I put it down, it's going to attach to the card. So I'm going to fold everything like this. The tab with the adhesive is underneath here. We'll make sure that that's pressed down well. And then when I let it go, you can see how that spring action happens. So now I'm going to load this up with the leaves that I made. And I'm going to reset the mechanism by pressing it down. Now when the card is opened, the leaves fling out. That's our finished card. Now, if you want the very best effect, you'll load it up just beforehand and then give it to your recipient in person. You can certainly make the card ahead of time, but maybe don't install this just yet. Or if you do install it, then store it open until you're ready to actually fill it. And the reason is because if you force it down flat for too long, whether that's when it's going through the mail or if you are storing it down flat in your card stash to give eventually to somebody, this rubber band over time could stretch and then it's not going to spring up quite as nicely. It will probably still work, but the action won't be as quick or surprising. So you can make this piece ahead of time, but maybe leave it off until closer to the time that you want to use it. And then that way, you'll have a really nice surprise. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in Paper Pumpkin and you don't have a demonstrator yet, I would love for you to subscribe with me, and you can find that link in the description below. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity and that you'll join me the next time. Till then, have a great day.